Welcome everyone to the Dan Homeres Artist Reception. I'm your host, Nancy Morrow, with my husband Dan. We're the owners of the gallery at 10 Oaks, if we haven't met you yet. And just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started and dive right in. First of all, if this is your first time to Zoom, what we ask is that you, excuse me, I'm letting someone in. If this is your first time to Zoom, the etiquette is to mute yourselves so that there's no outside noise coming in, no dogs barking, stuff like that, so that everyone can hear Dan okay. So if you're not muted, please take a minute to make sure you're muted. And then I have a list of questions that I'm going to go through with Dan, and he'll have tons of stories, I'm sure, to share with us. And then, of course, you are welcome to open up. We'll open it up to
Why can't we hear you?
I'm not sure. I'm going to mute Rilla. Connie, do you by chance have access to Rilla to call or text and see?
Yeah.
Maybe give a call.
I can hear you fine.
Okay.
All right.
And we will be opening it up.
Select the microphone right at the top.
If
I
you
did.
have questions, most everybody should have the ability to use their chat. Mine happens to be across the bottom of my screen. I know the Apple products might be having it a little bit different, but you're welcome to send via chat your comments, your questions for Dan, and I'll make sure to ask those as well. Otherwise, welcome. And we are recording this so that those who could not make it
Select the
today will be able
Look, test speaker.
we'll be able to see this via our social media here soon. All right, so welcome.
Okay.
So, Dan Homeres,
Hello there.
legend in our community and the art world.
Yeah, you better ask Michael Flores about the legend. He'll probably delineate all those ways that I snuck around to make sure it happened. I wanted to say at the onset, thanks to both of you guys over there at 10 Oaks, because it's a great opportunity for all of us. And what you're seeing here is really the ensemble of artists that are very helpful to everybody else. So I appreciate all your work, and I'm having a good time over there. And I do like the way you put everything together. I thought walking in there, you could see Linda Jerome's work really well, and it was lit up pretty well on those walls. So the combination of all our stuff, I think, worked pretty well. So I was really happy with it.
Good. Well, thank you. It's a beautiful show. You and Linda both did a great job creating this show and making it easy for us to hang and display too. So first of all, I do want to point out that we were very sad that we could not all meet in person this year because of the virus. And if you will look up behind me on my background, we have food artist Julia Hudspeth being represented. We are so sad Julia couldn't do this beautiful art display for an in-person. So I put a photo there
All right.
in honor of Julia's birthday today. And you know, the Hudspeths are now just joining us after
Oh, good.
Here
Hey, there's Sloan.
art. So there we go. So
All right.
you have Julia's food represented here with your art, kind of as a token to show that in spirit, she displayed the food for this reception. So
Great.
let's kick off and talk about your art style and what medium you use. I know you do most in watercolor and ink, but you've also done some mixed media and acrylic. So tell us about that.
Okay. Yeah, it's really mostly ink and watercolors. This last year, particularly with some of the colors from France, it seemed that they needed a little bit of a punch up in a way. And so I've been really mixed media with acrylics as well. I'm kind of not too different than Sherry Erickson, where I'm a little allergic to oils. And if you get a headache from every time you open something up, what's the purpose of working through that? But for me, it's really, I guess you could say, someplace between impressionistic and expressionistic. And I think a lot of it has to do with working style. In any case, it's having a writing background. Is that this will sound long-winded, but Dan Morrow doesn't care how long I go on this thing. So I'll just fire away. But it's it's really the combination of those two disciplines that really help me do it. I never have a blank page, which is an odd thing for a writer and sometimes an odd thing for a painter. But since the two disciplines work each other pretty well, I try to write colorfully and then edit and take the color out. I try to paint, like I said, in complete sentences, and then I go back and add color. So the two things kind of work pretty well for me, I think.
So what inspired you to do this particular show? I know you jumped in to creating it early in the year. We have a bunch of art from your travels, and we have local art to McMinnville, and then we have a little bit of everything in between. So what inspired you to put this show together?
Well, I think more than anything, not only being sequestered at home since end of February, said get to work. It's just, I think we came across colors in our France trip that really had the closest to my working palette. And so a lot of things when we're traveling, I'll take pictures of things that have color. And Connie is a much better photographer than I am. So after I get working and drawing off of those things, I use a lot of her photographs and just reference mine for the color palette more than anything else. So, well, I know you talk and people have talked about inspiration, and I'm working all the time, so I don't really depend on that. It's kind of a work ethic from my dad, who survived the Great Depression and the Second World War. You just get to work. It's not waiting around for something in particular to make you go.
You talked about your color palette. I know you've expanded a couple of your paintings to include purple, which you said you had not done before.
Yeah.
And talk about that, and will you do purple in the future?
Well, I hope I haven't exhausted those attempts. Wendy, who was part of the gallery for a long time, really had a great way of using that as a background color. And I think maybe because I went to high school with a high school that had purple, and you just kind of had a mental block of trying to get out of there for some reason. But lately I've been using it as a background, and oh, there it is. Yeah, that's actually one of my favorites. The one thing too that you had with Linda the other day, talking about using a squeegee for background. A lot of times what I'm doing is getting the work almost done and getting wet towels and pulling paint off. So it's a little bit of a hit or miss thing, but sometimes the watercolors you can come back and repair if you're not too fussy. I'm impatient, so I hit things and keep going. So that's about it. I can see my granddaughter in the corner over here, so I have to wave at her. Hi, Sloan. Okay, we're good. Yeah, I also see some neighbors. So after this Zoom show, if there's a lot of for sale signs up in my neighborhood, I'll really feel bad.
Yes. Well, let's not force anybody to move.
Yeah, that's right.
So how long have you been doing art?
60 years in some fashion or another. I kept on, going in and out of different things. I think really when you settle into a process that works for you, then you can really devote a lot of time. I think basically the last 20 years, pretty much with the painting, but I've been writing since I was 13. Oh, I have a story. This is for Rick. You can listen to this one. And if my sister's here, she'll just flip out, but that's okay. My dad was really a very creative person, not necessarily formally educated, but he was a fairly tough nut about things. Julia's heard the story, so that's okay. We were working in the garage once, and he had got mad at me how I was using these tools. And he said, and he wasn't a mean person, but he said to me, you better be able to make it with your head because you'll never make it with your hands. Now, I was instantly insulted, but my dad, you didn't exactly react to him in a negative way. So I put the tools away, went in the house and started writing a novel. I was 12 years old. And to his credit, my birthday came along and he bought me a typewriter. So everything kind of works out like that. So there's my Shanche story for the early. Thanks, Lori.
You mean there's your first Sean Shea story, and we'll see how.
Oh yeah. No, I
Last
probably have a
with us.
pile of it for his. Yeah, no, that's pretty good.
Well, that's
But
a good
anyways, he
segue
was,
into
he
talking
really
about.
was, yeah. I'm sorry.
That's a good segue into talking about you being a novelist, an author.
Yes.
Talk about the book Clam Man, which we have available to here at the gallery, but also just about your novels and
Yes.
what do you like to write about, and how are you doing with that, and are you writing now?
Yes. I'm writing now a little bit. My oldest son, David, and I are working on a book together. But for the most part, I understood really early on that I was not going to be as a person of the early 60s and middle 60s, I wasn't going to be particularly mainstream, but that didn't stop me from writing. These are in a way called absurdist fictions, but actually it's been pretty tough to write the last 4 years if you just think of things being absurd. You got to survive that just well enough to have something that works for you. But for me, they're basically character studies in a way of people that just don't quite fit in. And if those titles kind of fit up with that. I mean, Dog Falling is a good one for mine, and any number of other stories I've written. But I'm working all the time, and sometimes, like I say, I work off an outline pretty much like I'm drawing. And so that if something isn't working, I hop to the next section so that I don't have a blank page. And I worry about the linear aspects of it when I'm done. So, hey, there's Dean and Tammy. Hi there. Hey, our French friends. So she was my partner during the, you have to have a buddy system with the Rick Steves travel. And there's Tammy there. So good. Yeah, thanks for coming.
So
You better fire away here.
can all your books be purchased besides Clam Man, which is through us, your other books can all be purchased through Third Street Books here in McMinnville?
They can be ordered there. There's still a few copies. There's a couple of the books that have now gone to Kindle. So they can be purchased in that fashion if you want to read it that way. Like I say, they are not particularly mainstream bits of work, but Introverts Dedicated to Chaos and all these other titles that would have you guessing are available at some place and some time. There's also the latest one includes a lot of artwork in it. In fact, the protagonist is a very amateurish painter, and I can identify with him. So there you have it.
Well, I'm just going to keep doing this.
Clam Man, I'll go to Clam Man just briefly.
Yes, talk about Clam Man.
Clam Man started almost 30 years ago as I think we just had an election, and I wore a Nixon Agnew pin on my shirt, which horrified most everybody. He'd already been long left office, but I started writing a Clam Man thing to give to city council. And whoops, there we go. Oh, there's Clam Man. And what had happened with that was that they would read them, or the director would read them and say, they don't make any sense to me, but I like them and keep doing it. So I had kind of an easy get-go with my job with the city. And from that point on, I just collected those drawings and put them in this book that it was done out from an endowment fund. So it's kind of nice that they published it. And there's a picture of Steve Ganser, our old worker. There you go, Michael. There he is. There's the Gans pointing at something on the.
That next then.
All right.
Before we took pity on you and
Yes.
to push you into a full-time artist career, tell us about your former career here in McMinnville.
I actually, Ganser just laid me off last year during the COVID thing, but I had 37 years of working for the city of Mac, which for me as a public servant was the perfect job. And I got to do adult and youth sports, mostly youth sports, and manage Dancer Park, which is a place that I helped put together and worked an awful lot of hours. There were times on that particular job where I was coaching Julia's team. My dad was my assistant. Con and my mom were team moms. My two sons were umpires. So we were all out of the park at the same time. And those were really my favorite years with all that. It's quite fun. And so I liked it a lot. When I first started in 1982, the first person I ever met was Linda, was a yoga teacher. Hey, look at that. There's the ballpark. That's Danny Melieu, Jeremy Vernon, and my son Nick, who were the play with on my teams for soccer and baseball all their years, early years. And that's the ballpark. Thanks for putting that up.
Yeah. Well, I know for those of us who had kids come up through the McMinnville Youth Sports, we have sure appreciated all the work you did do for the community and still do. So we want to thank you for that.
Oh, sure. It's good. My pleasure.
So, and honestly, I swear, every time you came to ask for a sponsorship when we were at the retail store, we'd give you one and then we decide, oh, we felt sorry for you, so we give you two, and the next year you'd want three. It's like, hey, okay. But
yeah. Well, when we knew we had a sponsor year and year after in the bag, if we didn't have an extra sponsor for a team, we just put your name on shirts. And so it looked like you were sponsoring 4 and 5 teams, but you know, that league grew so much in the early times that we were, when we took it over, there was less than 200 kids. And when we, at our height, there was close to 1,300. So at Dancer Park was a big place with those 12 fields going, and it was a lot of fun. But, you know, with you as a sponsor, sometimes here we go, movie time was, or whatever we had was on everybody's shirt. So that's how it worked.
that's right. Little did we know that my man and you would become arch nemesis here at the art gallery years later. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to take a minute here and welcome those of you who joined us after we started. It's great having you all here. And if you have anything, let me see, we have a chat. If you have anything you'd like to say, then go ahead and type it into the chat, or we will open everybody's mics up here soon and ask. So let me bring up some more images on screen here that you can talk about.
Okay.
Let's see here. Dan, is there one that you would like to talk about in particular?
Really, I think the newer primitive one on Mouffetard, one of the streets in Paris, is an interesting one. It's the bigger.
Is that which one is that?
It's the bigger one that's in the center of the display.
Oh, sure.
Probably starts with.
There it is.
Yes.
That one. This one, just so everyone knows that my Dan and I like to refer to this as Mr. Homeres' tribute to the 101 Dalmatians original Disney art. This one just cries out that style. We absolutely love it. So tell us a little bit about this.
Well, yeah, that we really had a very fun tour this last time in France, but Con and I spent as time as we would getting lost is the best way to go in big cities. But in this particular district, we came around and we saw this and sat down behind us. We were having lunch, and from an angle, the street looked complicated and fun, but in a way, it would work with a more primitive type of painting. So I did a little sketch and took a picture, and later that night I drew it again. And that's Zelig barking at somebody knocking on the door, and Con's chasing him. And what had happened was, after the sketch, we went back to this neighborhood and walked again. It's La Halle and part of Marais district in Paris. And as I got around the corner, I saw someone had drawn or painted the same picture. And it looked like it was 30 or 40 years old, but the whole thing had been flipped the other direction. So it was an odd feeling there, having copied something out of the past, but we had the same perspective when this was painted. And really, his work or her work was a rather primitive attempt too. So I thought, oh, I'm kind of on the right program with that particular one. So I like it quite a bit. And it's one of those ones where my impatience really kicked in, and then I drew it, I painted it, and I did the overcoat on the thing, and I was done in a day because I was just going to finish it and put it aside. So I like it because it has that little history to it for myself.
That is very cool. Another one that is one of our favorites, let me get it up here. And I had posted this one on social media for those who
Yes.
talk to us about this one. This one's
Okay.
similar to your style, but it's slightly different too.
Yes. It's this is Mount Saint Michel, the island off of Normandy coast. And it's a beautiful place. It's one of those things in the old days, the tides would come in and the island was not accessible. Now there's a road to it, which means you can get in and out all the time. But it's really a beautiful place. We just happened to be there on one of the few days on this vacation that was raining. And just the light coming from the shops that were open seemed to make everything rather stick up. It's sort of a noir type of attempt that's things a little darker, not sinister, but just dark and wet. And again, as Oregonians, we didn't mind the rain all that much, as some other people have kind of freaked out. But Con's rather intrepid, and we just keep on going on all these tours. So that's pretty good. But I do like it, and it is different, mostly because the light paid off by having the surrounding be rather dark.
Nice.
And I think, again, when you look at a lot of Linda's Jerome stuff or work, she has a really nice emphasis on where light comes from. And I wasn't consciously copying her at the time, but I've always sort of liked the way she goes about that.
Well, speaking of Linda Jerome,
Yes.
Linda has a question, and for those of you wondering,
Oh.
she and her husband Dave are under the tag Dave's iPad. Wave, Linda, so we can see, say hello to you. So Linda's question is, how many paintings do you make in a month, and do you work on location?
I couldn't hear the last part.
How many paintings do you do per month, and do you work on location?
No, I probably, working on something, I'm probably working on 2 or 3 at a time, mostly because the impatience kicks in. And if I'm at a particular color palette, I try to keep things very similar. There's 2 paintings with a blue background that are hanging on in the gallery right now that were, in a way, sort of mirror images. Belle V, I think, is one of them. Guy on a bicycle, and then a lady with an umbrella. But I just I work entirely from home, and I'm not a plein air painter. Yeah, there you go. And that one again was one I was working with simultaneously to the lady with the umbrella, which is, I don't even remember the titles of these things, but you'll probably better than I do. Sometimes I'm painting.
And I'll just search for it here.
Yeah, just keep searching for something blue, and that'll no.
We have quite a bit of art here, so.
Yeah, you do. I should really do a better job of knowing what I'm producing, but
Well, and sometimes you give us a piece of art with. Oh, thank you. So my partner in crime just poked his head into where I am and told me which it was. So
okay.
Go.
There we go.
There we go.
Those are rainy nights, but it was sort of in a way a tribute to the old Umbrellas of Cherbourg movie. And I just happened to see this woman walking by where everybody else was somewhat suffering from the rain. She looked like there was a normal part of her day. And she was moving along pretty well. But again, I work really from home, and so many of the papers that I'm using, I'll try to just about on anything I can find to paint. And so I'm more comfortable with that. That's in Montmartre. And that has to do with the old movie, French movie, The Red Balloon, which a lot of kids have seen. And there's a little red balloon in there. But that's the streets where that little child ran. The film's in black and white. So it's interesting to juxtapose colors on there once you get taking a look at it.
If you're referencing one piece of art that's a movie reference, I of course have to pull up my movie Dirty Disc and
Yes.
the other one too. So,
Yeah.
so I have a note here from Jim Richards that says he loved
Okay.
your art and it's nice seeing your art hanging on the wall every time I go up and down the stairs. Brings a smile to my face with memories of place.
That's great. Great. Thank you, Jim. Yeah, we're, like I say, I think one thing that you guys have really put together well is the ensemble of artists there that are supportive and productive and have a lot of good information. So for someone who is basically self-taught, I was kind of released on my own recognizance, if you want to think in terms of crime. The judge is here too, my neighbor, so I don't want to talk too much about my particular history in case everybody wants to leave this neighborhood. But sorry, Wayne, there you go. But yeah, like I say, that's kind of part and parcel of getting to work and really experiencing all these things. And as you can see, there's a nice cadre of friends who appreciate that sort of stuff too.
So talk to us a little bit about what type of art you like. Like go to galleries and you're not seeing your own art, or
Yes.
and somebody or your favorite artist who inspires you. You know,
Okay.
I believe you got to visit the Van Gogh Museum
Yes.
in Amsterdam and
Right.
May's home. So talk to us about what art do you like and which artists do you follow?
Yeah. The Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam really was my favorite. In part, it was, I went there with my sister. She's a broker and she takes one person in her family on one of her vacations every year. And it was my turn. But she also, for my birthday, got me an hour downstairs where the racks were. And there was people painting off of paintings so that you could line up behind them while they attempted to copy those Van Goghs. But it was an interesting time to spend. In Spain, the Picasso Museum was, I think, maybe my ultimate favorite, just because there were so many bodies of work in there. But for my own sake, we went to Journey and saw Monet's home and played around there. And you can really get close to those paintings and see the work and the brushstrokes, which are kind of becoming more and more important about how I'm tackling some of these. But so far as other painters, Van Gogh, Monet, and there's another painter named Maurice Utrillo, who I have read books on. There's inside Monet's home, kind of a window shot there. But Utrillo really had, for my sake, a really good sense of how to mute colors in a way. A lot of things he painted during the winter have just seemed correct to me. And so I like him in particular. And when you get to the big museums, it's really fun to be able to get close to so many of the works. The d'Orsay Museum was really good because they had a whole section of Impressionist work, and you can basically spend the bulk of your vacation in there, although Con and I were hungry quite a bit, so we had to try a lot of French food. But beyond that, there's a lot to really appreciate about those particular museums. So I liked it a lot.
Well, and we do know that you had a piece that was inspired by Edward Hopper that pretty much sold as soon as you brought it into the
Yes.
gallery a couple of years ago.
Yes.
Will you be doing others in that tradition or?
I think so. I think what happens is I'm, whether anybody likes this idea or not, I think I'm done with France. So I think I've painted my way through that a whole section. And there's other things I could do, but I'm sort of moving off into maybe a more themed bit of work. And I'm not sure I can relate what the whole picture will look like or what the series will be like. I did play around with some of those other caricatures that had rather long and sometimes ambiguous titles that are not framed, but they're part of the show as well. But I'm kind of working off of that end a little bit. And since the project that my son and I are working on includes some prose and some poetry and paintings, I'm trying to marshal up the work that, yeah, there he goes. This is a man is inspired by Jagger to have corned beef hash.
Portrait of Jagger inspires man to eat.
Yeah, yeah. I was
Thank you
paraphrasing.
for making it challenging to put a display tag to this piece of art.
Yeah, I think sometimes I did that intentionally, knowing that you'd be scratching your head, but you know, that's part of the fun of it, I think. So.
Well, we have to bring up, since we have you and my husband here both, because I absolutely love this one that you have named Hellenbach.
Yes.
And it even says under the description, formerly known as Nancy, to understand the description, gallery owner Dan Morrow.
Yes.
So you and Dan can share this story.
Well, yeah, he can explain your nickname better. I don't know how far out you want that to go, but
I don't know. You've named a piece of art with a description, and I'm okay with that.
I would say that people have to come into the gallery to get to hear the whole story as to why your nickname is Helen. That's the requirement.
Yeah, yeah. And that drawing actually was part of a Clam drawing originally with the guy, and then I thought, well, let's put Helen in there, and then as a musical thing, it became Helen Bach instead of Helen Back. So that's it.
Well, we'd like to also know if your daughter Julia will be appearing in more paintings. Or
well, yeah. Hey, Con, I'm in the dark here. Oh, you can't. I can't see myself. That's okay. Well, yeah, Jewel has been the protagonist of any number of stories and paintings, but she's there pictured with Sloan. Oh, hey, hi, Con. But anyways, and Sloan really has been the lead character in a lot of portrait painting for me. So,
nice.
and she's my favorite. So I can say that, I guess.
And we also have a comment here that says, hopefully you're not done with Spain. We love seeing the places we visited on our Rick Steves tour.
I don't know.
But what about Spain?
I don't know. We're having technical difficulties only because technically I'm difficult. I can't see myself, which is actually a bonus. Jay Pearson was here a while ago, and he always recommended that I wear a big beard because the less of my face showing was a public service to everyone in our city. So the fact that I can't see myself on here is actually working pretty good. So we're fine.
Lori Chanchet is asking if you've ever been to Cadaqués, Spain. Is that how I'd say it? Okay.
Yes. Cadaqués. Yes. Yes. My grandfather was born there. So my mom's dad was born there, and part of the city hall records that we looked up, we could actually find the street there, old cobblestone street where he was born on, not the address, but the street itself, since it hadn't changed in 600 years or something. But yeah, Cadaqués, and around the corner from that is the Dali home in Port Legat, and that's always worth seeing. So yeah, we that particular trip, we went down there to see the museum and then Dali's home, but also Cadaqués. So my grandfather had left Spain at 15 years old or so and went to Cuba. That's where my mother was born. And he actually, this sounds like the Godfather movie a little bit, but he had left there not wanting anybody to know. And he left from a city called Sitges. So when he got to Cuba, he called himself Marcelino Sitges, up until the time he wanted to get married. And he told his future wife, well, that's really not my name. And it was Aníbal Marcelino Palet, was his name. And that my mom was named Elisa Palet. So that's my Godfather story, I guess. But I never met him. I never met any of my grandparents, but I did talk to him on the phone once in Cuba. And he was mad at me because my Spanish wasn't very good. And I was mad at him for getting mad at me. So that's the only grandparent contact I ever had. It wasn't, my mother was somewhat chagrined, but she was about a lot of things in my case.
I'd like to bring up one more painting here.
Okay, let's do that.
And I'd like you to tell the story behind this painting. I think you brought it in, you shared the story. It's just a very beautiful painting, but the story makes it even more beautiful. So if you'd share this. Okay.
This is, once again, from a photograph that Kahn took a long time ago. We're up in the Presidio, the cemetery in San Francisco, where my grandfather and grandmother were buried. And we used to, as kids, once a year, visit that site. Now, I never met either of those grandparents. My grandmother actually passed away a month before I was born, but I had a lot of stories from them. And that particular site was looking through those other trees and flowers to the other side of the Golden Gate. It's also important that my dad, who grew up in San Francisco as well as I did, was one of those first kids in 1937 as a high school senior to run across the Golden Gate Bridge when it was opened. So this particular painting and Kahn really composing it away from a photograph has always been kind of meaningful for all of us, but that's basically 30 yards from the gravesite and looking through and across the bridge. So it's meaningful.
Nice. So what would you say to someone who's just starting out? Let's narrow that down. What would you say to someone who's just starting out wanting to be an artist?
Yeah, just starting out, would be a different ball of wax. Well, I think one of the things is to try lots of different things and don't give up. I mean, tenacity for all the artists you see here and writers like Linda, my neighbor, is that you just don't give up. And if you can be thin-skinned sometimes about criticism, but you can't let that be the driving force. So for me, it's just that you work at it and you find a process. I think we talked a little bit about, and just like Sherry Erickson had talked about, not being able to paint with oils because we're allergic to it a bit. And then Linda Jerome talking about wanting to paint with oils, which is in some fashion considered the ultimate way of going about it. But it's really coming up to a process that lets you not be overwhelmed by the process, where you can do something that'll work. And from that point, you just you start doing the work that you want to do. It frees you up pretty good. I think what happens is, for so many people, is that you forget that being creative is the most important part. And you go from fear of failure to becoming fearless in a way. And that's a mega jump for some, and for others, it's really something they're bound to do. So I just say, just don't quit. It can be frustrating, but find a process that works for you and work like crazy. I thought, years ago when I started using ink and watercolor that I had invented something, and it turned out to be the Sumerians were doing it 5,000 years ago. So that sort of said, oh, well, I did do ancestry.com and found out that, I was 1% Sumerian. So I thought, well, that works out pretty good.
Nice.
So,
Well, Jim Richards has a question.
okay, Jim.
Do you enjoy making art or writing better, or do they feed each other, or do you ride the crest of whatever wave is taking you along?
Yeah, I'm not much of a crest soul, but I like them too equally because the disciplines are different just enough, but they can overlap more than anything in the editing process, where I kind of feel that it works pretty well as a combination. I don't really like one better than the other. I've just haven't waffled as much from the writing as I have back and forth from photography to paint.
Connie, he's frozen. Bear with us while Connie does her technical magic here to get Dan unfrozen. Oh, there we are. Oh, look, he's on 2 screens now. Unmute yourself. On Connie's, unmute yourself. Dan, you have to turn on your audio on Connie's.
There you go.
Okay,
Oh.
okay. This gets tougher as you see, but okay. Like I said, I hope with 2 images it isn't mistaken for a schizoidal exit from this whole plan here today. All right. Did I finish my last part or?
Yes. And
Good.
Rilla is saying, hi, Dan and Connie. It's so great to see you. Special time we spent in Spain. We love our paintings too, Rilla and Dan.
That's great. They're our favorites. Dan was my buddy in Spain because we could remember each other's name. And so we had a lot of fun with them together. And Larry and Catherine too.
So does anybody have any other questions? You can either type it into chat or you can unmute yourself and ask. And while you're doing that, we would like to wish Julia a very happy birthday. And tomorrow is Dan's birthday. So a very happy birthday to Julia and Dan this weekend.
Yay. Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions or comments or thoughts?
I can see Sloan jumping all over the place, so I know she's
Could I just say hello? Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I remember being so impressed with Dan's work the first time I saw it and wondering how he got that surface on his painting. So I love to see it. Unique style that he has, and it's just been really fun to see the volume of work that he puts out. It's great.
Thanks. Thanks, I appreciate that.
And now you're muted on your other computer. Unmute yourself.
Did you unmute?
Well, yeah, I'm trying all sorts of visuals here.
Hang on a second, Dan.
Hey, there we go.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, I said, thanks for that, Linda. It's like I say, there's so many nice combinations of people working in the gallery that each and every one of these shows is informative and fun to watch. And that's a tribute to Dan and Nancy quite a bit to me. So not only do they sponsor baseball teams, but they've hung in there for so many other things.
So we have a question from Linda. Have you ever used natural materials for paint pigments like flowers, etc.? I know I happen to have a piece of your art that you used the hose on to create it. So
Yeah. No, I guess I have combined some things, not to great success. The painting that Helen is talking about here was called Reversal. And I was trying to paint these flowers on this butcher paper and it never came out right. So I took it out on the back porch, hosed it down. When it dried up and wrinkled, I looked on the backside and that was exactly what I was trying to do. So I framed it. She likes it. And that's one way of tackling something unorthodox. But it really, like I said, once the process for me was comfortable, where I was using a lot of Bombay inks, sometimes mixed with the watercolors and sometimes as the drawing source. And the advent of acrylics as making highlights, I just kind of thought, let's keep the process and concentrate on what the product would be. So yeah, I guess now at this at these senior moments, you don't want to do too many experiments because then you forget what the hell you're doing before. So I better hang in there.
Are there any other questions? Anybody want to ask Dan anything? Really, this is the shortest we've ever had a conversation with Mr. Homeres. Come on, he's got tons of stories. He's just dying to share.
No, I've done my sharing. I think I'm happy enough with it. There's too many other ones that they, again, you just don't want to forget some of the nexus of the stories once you get a little old, because as a fiction writer, I can use that as an excuse, but there's only so far you can carry that as well. But
And a lot of life is creating new memories there too, new stories.
well, that's the case. I think, one thing that we have some people here that we've traveled with is that we've been advocates, and I don't mean to make this a commercial, but PBS and Rick Steves has done a nice job. And for anybody that does travel, once this pandemic is done, there's a great book called Travel as a Political Act that he's written. And it's a smart way of looking at other cultures and how other things operate within a framework you can appreciate. So it's a very good book, and we've had a lot of fun going with those groups. In fact, as you can see here, we've made some lifelong friends from people we didn't know until we started bouncing around in these other countries. So
Nice.
But yeah.
Well, I'd like to just let everyone know too, yesterday, as many of you know, here in Oregon, there's now a new statewide quarantine starting on Wednesday. The gallery is not affected by that. We will continue to be open Friday through Sunday. We are doing a balancing act because if we close, it doesn't just affect Dan and I, it affects nearly 40 artists and their families. So we're trying to be safe. We feel very confident in our mask wearing and our sanitation, and we do not have the volume of foot traffic like a lot of places have. And we do encourage you, if you can make an appointment with us if you want to have the gallery to yourself, or pop in on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday between 11 to 4. Dan and Linda have just poured so much heart and soul into the show. It's just stunning. And that's another reason we are going to stay open as long as we can. We even extended it until January 10th, just to make sure we have extra time. So we are available, and also every piece of art in the gallery is available on tinoaksgallery.com. You can order and do curbside pickup, or if you want, we can do a Zoom with you and show you around. So lots of ways to check out this great art. I'm getting back to you. Rilla is asking for a list of your books, please.
Actually, what I'll do, Rilla, is I'll send you a list of them. And I think you actually read one of them. Which one did you read? I forget. But I don't know if it was Dog Falling or one of those, or Sub Rosa perhaps. But I'll send her a list. The one thing about extending the show to January 10th, is it?
Yes.
We personally in this house are celebrating the holidays until January 20th.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Maybe anybody else would want to have a little longer. Hey, Gans, I see you down there in the corner. Hey, bud. And so anyways,
I'm here.
Holidays that long. So thanks for having me on here. And once again, those people that don't think a wise guy can triumph, here's a way of saying, yep, he's getting away with it again. What the hell?
Could you, Dan, share one quick story?
Oh my gosh.
What I really love about your paintings, and when I travel as well, the difference between taking photographs and actually doing drawings where you are is you have a different memory. But that's not what I wanted to ask you. You told me a great story of when you were driving down San Francisco with your dad when you were about 8 years old. And that story is so classic that you have to tell everybody and share the story that you had with your dad, because it was very, it has a very father-son element to it.
Yeah. Well, my dad was an interesting person. There's a painting there in the gallery about Clay Street. And at the time in San Francisco, they were changing streets from two-way. This is early mid-50s, 1950s. They were changing a lot of streets from two-way to one-way. And my dad, who had known, he wasn't a cab driver, but he knew every street in the city. And in the old family Packard, we're driving down the street, and all of a sudden he grabs me by the shirt and throws me in front of the seat onto the floorboard. And I thought, gosh, he's mad at me. And I couldn't figure out what I'd done. But instantaneously we heard a pop, 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 and he'd seen somebody with a gun and made a U-turn on a one-way street and knew how to get out of traffic and away from danger. And it was, I was just glad he wasn't really mad at me, but he was streetwise enough to get us out of there and not be harmed in any fashion. So not that gunplay happened a lot, but he or ever other than that instance, but he did see it happening.
Well, what I thought was great is that he threw you into the floor so that if there was any gunshots, you wouldn't get shot.
Yeah. Well, that's that was his fatherhood role. He and then again, of course, he'd throw me other places at other times and made no sense to me either. But that one worked out pretty good. My dad was a very good boxer, and so he, as I was a little kid, he taught me how to box, and I boxed quite a bit, and I actually boxed in the police athletic league as a kid. But as a teenager, we were in Southern California finally, and we were practicing one time, and he always knew and always taught me you don't lead with the right hand, which he did. And I hit him with a left hook. And it's the only time I ever landed a punch on my dad. His knees wobbled, and my mom ran out of the kitchen and hit him with a towel because he was about to clock me into the ground. And we never boxed again, but taught me that amongst many other things. So that's it for my dad's story. I better stop there.
Thanks, Dan.
Steve Ganser has heard all these stories 100 times, and the poor guy, he just doesn't need too much more of that. But
that's probably why he waited so long to join us, hoping you would be past the stories.
Oh, yeah. No, he didn't want to get on the early part of that stuff. Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me. It was a nice time. I wish we could all get together, and maybe we will as the next year proves beneficial to everybody.
Well, we are hopeful, and thank you for being here with us today. We are going to put this up on our social media, so if you'd like to put it over and over and over again, you are welcome to. I believe Jay and Steve are going to put this on nonstop. And again, happy birthday to Julia. Happy birthday to you tomorrow. Thank you so much to you and to Linda Jerome for making this an extra special show during these dark days of November and December with light on the horizon. So thank you. And don't forget, come into the gallery and see the show if you can. See you all later.
All right.
All right, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Fun.